This is going to be a very long video. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is the best book in the series, and that's coming from somebody who's been saying that Catching Fire is their favorite book for 10 years. And while Catching Fire might still be my favorite book, Songbirds is the best book. And a second hot take, I think this book has the potential to be the best film in the series. Before we get into all the nitty-gritty, I'll give you a brief summary of the book while you peruse the table of contents. Be warned, this video spoils the entire franchise. Songbirds and Snakes is set during the 10th Hunger Games, approximately 60 years before Katniss's Hunger Games. We follow high school-aged Snow as he mentors a tribute girl in hopes of using the money from her winnings to pay for his college education. The tribute girl, who's more or less a District 12 theater kid, clearly does not have a shot at winning, but Snow thinks maybe he can manipulate her theatrical presence to win him money or scholarships or what have you. The story goes about showing Snow mentoring the tribute, Lucy Gray, who inadvertently begins the tradition of entertainment before the games. Lucy cheats to become the victor, and Snow is consequently exiled to District 12. There the power dynamic shifts, and Snow realizes he doesn't really love Lucy, but instead loved the control he had over her while she was at his mercy in the capital. That's very, very brief. There's a lot more to the story than that, and in fact this book is over 500 pages, while the other books in the series are about 350 pages apiece. Assuming you've read this book and this summary is just a refresher, let me tell you why I think it's the best in this series. I think that this book was written with the mindset that though this is a YA series, the fan base is now adult, and so instead of attempting to appeal to the new generation of young adults, Suzanne Collins decided to age up her storytelling to appeal to the original crowd. This is kind of to the Hunger Games what WandaVision is to the MCU. This is reflected in the length of the novel as well as the slower pacing and the generally more explicit content. Perhaps the thing that makes this book feel grown up compared to the originals is that this book is less an action-adventure and more psychological thriller. It's also the only one in this series to be written in omniscient third-person past tense. Imagine if in Katniss's journey in the Hunger Games we also saw Gale caring for Katniss's family and Peeta's time with the careers. That's more or less the dynamic with Songbirds, but with Snow's experience as Lucy's mentor, Lucy's struggle as a tribute, and Snow's classmate Sejanus inciting the first hints of a rebellion. In acting, they talk about real versus true, and obviously as a work of fiction, all of this is not real, but when you follow a girl who acts like a real teenager and a boy who craves social change, it feels true, at least more true than how the other books felt to me. Many of us are now adults looking into this world not as what would I do if I were chosen for the games as we were afforded to think by experiencing the original trilogy through the eyes of a teenager in a way that almost felt safe, because I think even on a subconscious note, when you read the book with Katniss as our protagonist, you kind of have this sense of security, like, oh, she's gonna be fine, she's our narrator. But now with Songbirds, that old feeling of hope is replaced with a feeling of dread. And I appreciate that juxtaposition because the whole first trilogy was hope. Snow has that line in the movie.
Hope, it is the only thing stronger than fear.
And this one, there is no hope. It's all just dread. In the original trilogy, Katniss's two love interests are guys who generally have her best interest at heart, but Lucy has a pattern of getting in with bad men, first with her ex Billy, with whom she literally feels unsafe around, and then later, of course, with Snow, who may or may not have murdered her. The literal, often brutal objectiveness of the storytelling frames Snow's personal problems as ridiculous and satirical as opposed to pitiful. So you don't have to go in thinking that this is an appeal to get you to like the villain of the original trilogy, because I really don't think it's that.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
In terms of satire, there's almost a perfect one-to-one correlation between our two heroines, Katniss from the original trilogy and Lucy in this book. Katniss has a younger sister, Lucy has a younger sister figure. Both Katniss and Lucy are the main providers for their family. Both are from the same, both are 16 years old, both are involved in a love triangle, both are from District 12, both have been victors by cheating, neither have a parental figure, etc. It's pretty much a bait and switch. But while Katniss is a skilled hunter, Lucy is acutely aware that if she doesn't cheat in the arena, she's going to lose. That being the case, we come into Songbirds with a very different expectation for Lucy than for Katniss. Katniss, much like the Mockingjay, is a symbol of hope, but Lucy is a tattered butterfly in a field of moths. These two characters are going to be compared regardless, but their similarities make it seem like a deliberate choice. like we're supposed to be comparing them. Lucy is almost parodic of Katniss whilst maintaining an authenticity that makes her feel more relatable to the average teenager. Katniss is a hunter, Lucy is an animal whisperer. Katniss is fiercely introverted, Lucy is compared to a circus clown. Katniss is by de facto our golden standard for what a victor should look like in this universe, and so everything that Lucy does that contradicts Katniss's actions is a subconscious hint that something bad is going to happen. The biggest parody of all, and what I interpret to be the most direct jab at the original trilogy, is Lucy and Snow's relationship. It's yikes from the jump, and I don't think that there's anybody who doesn't think it's yikes, because you go into the story knowing that the end has to justify the means, and so it's clearly a ticking time bomb. As with everything in Songbirds, it's irony, and it's uniquely disturbing. There's never a point in this book where you're going and hoping that Lucy and Snow run off and have a life together. In fact, each successive romantic moment feels like a drop tower jolting towards the ground. Romance on the whole is rare in this book, but when it is there, it's written in this really weird, unappealing way that almost feels like it's supposed to put you off. So this romance reads like a cursed game of hot potato where you sit back and wonder which of the two of them is going to get more screwed over by the end. Now, what I find very interesting, and what I think a lot of people found frustrating, is that there's not a single good character in this book. They're all extremely problematic, and I think that's totally on purpose. Remember the characterizations in Gone Girl. Everyone is pretty awful, but they're fleshed out in a way that makes you understand why they're awful. I liken the three Songbirds protagonists, Snow, Lucy, and Sejanus, to unstaked baby trees. With guidance and support, they would have grown up perfectly fine, but having gone without it, they've grown up crooked past the point of correction, having bent in extreme ways that lead to them being cut down. The character I'm most drawn to in this story is Lucy Gray. I knew from the promotion of the book that Snow was mentoring a District 12 girl, but I didn't expect her to be a theater kid. You know, who would?
Musical.
Over the course of the book, I really started enjoying reading her story because for the most part, I feel like that's how the average teenage girl would have acted in the Hunger Games. Running away as soon as the gong goes off, crying in public, singing at their interview and no one clapping. Lucy is fascinating in kind of a sad way, but fascinating nevertheless. She feels like what would actually happen if you dropped a modern teenager in the arena and said, go. Katniss is kind of this impossible, ageless superheroine who just so happens to be a 17-year-old girl. She's almost always perfectly rational and calculated, while Lucy is more bombastic and impulsive. Katniss is often stoic to the point of contention. Lucy has absolutely no poker face. Katniss did everything in her power to protect her sister, but Lucy unintentionally puts her sister in harm's way. And I'm not saying that teenage girls can't be quiet and reserved, because they certainly can be. What I'm saying is I think there are more girls like Lucy who are constantly messing up than Katniss, who is fronting a civil war.
People of Panem, we fight! We dare to end this hunger for justice!
You've just been in battle! I'm sorry. Excuse my outburst. You've just been in battle.
Lucy messes up a lot. She's pretty immature beneath her rainbow ruffles and ballads. It is, dare I say, this immaturity that gets her reaped for the Hunger Games after she makes enemies with the mayor's daughter. Lucy may be immature, but she goes through the entire story thinking that she knows best. And I suppose that as the parental figure to the children living in the Cubby house, she does know best. The story makes a point to say that she raised herself, and she's raised herself pretty poorly at that. I love how the story discusses consequences in a way that the original trilogy doesn't do. It shows the consequences of children who have had to raise themselves, and moreover, the consequences of being a victor. If you win the Hunger Games, does that give you a superiority complex? If not, just subconsciously, because Lucy returns home thinking she's invincible. She does the thing that Katniss and Gale toyed with for the entire series. She takes off and lives in the woods. But Lucy doesn't seem to consider the reasons that ultimately held Katniss back. She doesn't think that her family will starve or run into trouble without her. Worse, Lucy even sets them up for failure by raiding their stockroom, rationalizing that they'll be alright if she leaves them her favorite dress, the one that she won the Hunger Games in, and her guitar behind. Do you see what I mean by naive? We're now moving out of the realm of story analysis and into the hypothetical realm of movie ideas. I said earlier that I think the Songbirds film has the potential to be the best in the series, and I stick to my guns on that, because I think unlike the other sequel films, this one has the potential to stand independent from the rest of the series, sort of like Rogue One and Star Wars. It's part of the games, yes, but it's also its own thing. I think that this movie would be doing itself a favor if it tried to divorce itself from the original trilogy as much as possible. People don't even necessarily need to know that Snow goes on to become the trilogy's main antagonist. Before I discuss the movie, which was announced simultaneously with the book, I want to start with our current situation. We're 4 movies into this franchise that has been dormant for 6 years. Who is this for? With a book that is, in my opinion, an adult piece of fiction in every way but in the central character's ages, it seems to me that Suzanne Collins wanted to follow the existing fandom into a more mature conversation, as I've said before. But Lionsgate bringing the film to theaters with much the same production staff as the original trilogy, it seems they want to make another PG-13 action-adventure sci-fi film, catering to a new fan base of teenagers, which is, in a sense, rebooting the franchise. In my personal opinion, this story would be most successfully and faithfully told as a limited series, maybe 6 45-minute parts. In this route, we could definitely tackle almost everything in the novel and make it that psychological exploration that I think Suzanne Collins wanted. The limited series avenue generally warrants an older crowd that would be down for something more niche and more unapologetically, unironically dark, and that's just not something I think a wide release film marketed towards a general audience would allow for. I'm actually quite surprised at the age of online streaming that we're not getting Songbirds the limited series. It could be the first installment in a larger Hunger Games expanded universe. Think of Black Mirror if it were like a linear storyline, or maybe You or The Queen's Gambit. Actually probably the most like The Queen's Gambit, I think. If Hunger Games were to blow up like any of those series did, it may be able to cater to the same crowd that loves Game of Thrones. Hunger Games even has an advantage, I'd say, because it's IP that everybody is already familiar with, and so we have so much good material to work with, which is why it's confusing to me as to why this avenue hasn't already been taken. Each limited series could focus on a new piece of the world so that it never feels tired. The games are part of it, sure, but it's not a big chunk of the story in a way that it would have to be in a movie. Finnick's era, I think, would be a great series. We could see him as a younger guy, and then in his games and in his prostitution era, and then the secrets and the Capitol blackmailing Annie. It would be a great story. And Haymitch's Year could be another great one, and Joanna Mason and Beatty, and we have all these little nuggets of victors and how they won, and just imagine how cool that would be as a series of limited series, you know? Kind of like what Marvel's doing with their limited series. Making these new series with the mindset that it's for an adult crowd but let us discuss things that we couldn't discuss before. So that would be really interesting, especially for Finnick. I don't think you could do Finnick's story as a PG-13 piece. I think it would have to be an R-rated piece, honestly, just because of what it covers. So the film route, with the path being taken, seems to be another building block on top of the franchise that already exists. It expands the lore, and that's wonderful. I think this would be a great movie, but it needs some condensing to fit into a 2-hour time slot. And so without further ado, since the Songbirds feature film is already in the works, I've decided to focus on what that might look like. And the answer is very different than what I want to see in a limited series. Specifically, I'd like the tone to be significantly lighter than in the other movies, and because the story is, in its most literal iteration, a story of evil prevailing over good, I want to make the tone as light as possible without insulting the integrity of the plot. The director of the original trilogy and the newest movie, Francis Lawrence, has said before that he doesn't want to adapt the books, he wants to translate them to the screen, and I'm interested to see if he's going to do the same thing for Songbirds, because in my opinion, the best way to translate this movie would be to adapt it, and quite heavily, because we have a lot more material in this book than in the other books, so we need to condense it like a soup, like a Hunger Games soup. Because we no longer have the element of surprise, and Songbirds is in a sense a reboot for people who aren't part of the fandom, we need to bring in something totally fresh to the table. And I think that that could be done with a revamped tone, which includes music, since music is such a huge part of the story. This film might be ironic in a way that's tasteful, a little bit more self-aware than what we're used to, because in the age of superhero films, sci-fi action movies are a dime a dozen. When the first Hunger Games movie came out, the first Avengers movie hadn't come out yet. So we are in a very different time than we were then. This could be to the Hunger Games franchise what Thor Ragnarok is to the MCU, or what Brave New World is to the dystopian genre, or what The Edge of 17 is to the teen genre. And I don't want you as a theoretical audience member to have to brush up on your Hunger Games lore from 10 years ago to be able to understand and enjoy this movie. If you know more, you'll be rewarded with fan service. If not, no sweat. All you need to know is the bare minimum. The Hunger Games is a fight to the death for teenagers. Everyone is poor except the people in the Capitol. Go. Here's my plot idea. Just so you know, before I start going into this plot, I'm really not trying to rewrite the book. Obviously, I'm just a fan. I don't mean for this to be super serious. All right. Let's go. By the way, I'm a theater kid, so please bear with me. Most of these are theater terms because I don't know the screenwriting equivalent. We open with a pan of 75 Hunger Games tapes on a shelf. Starting with tape 75, it's serene until we reach tape 10. Then a bomb goes off nearby. The camera shakes, dust falls. We realize we're in the Mockingjay Part 2 timeline, presumably in the presidential mansion. We hear someone start to pound on the door. A hand abruptly grabs the VHS off the shelf and rips the tape out of it, destroying it. Blackout. We're now in the Songbirds timeline and the beginning of the plot. Before we see anything, we hear a cappella humming like from the first movie, peppered with the sound of a summer forest. A Chiron reads District 12. Our first shot is inside the Covey house at the break of dawn with busted shoes at the foot of rows of beds filled with age-ordered sleeping children. The camera focuses on the littlest girl, clearly too young to be reaped, Maud Ivory. She hears the humming and bolts up, instinctively looking at the farthest bed from her, which happens to be the only one without a person or shoes. We follow little Maud outside, where we see the Covey house is in the middle of hecking nowhere, and there, off in the distance, is the girl we're looking for, Lucy. She's faced away, waiting in the high grass, looking for a snake. Lucy shows it to Maud, who innocently asks her if it's a good luck charm for the reaping day, and offers, "If they call your name, I'll volunteer for you." And Lucy brushes her off by saying, "That's the snake's job." The girls end up on the roof of the dilapidated Covey house, watching the sun rise over the District 12 town square. Maud notices Lucy's sad eyes and begins to quietly sing a bit of Keep on the Sunny Side, which Lucy eventually hums along to. Title card, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Bleed into an establishing shot of the dark and gray Snow family kitchen, where we hear a muffled radio rendition of Sunnyside from the neighbor's apartment below. Chiron reads, The Capitol. The shots are stiff and sterile, and we see a backlit Snow and Grandmam eating a breakfast of cabbage stew across from each other in silence, while the neighbors below merrily get ready for their day. The tension is abruptly broken as Tigress runs in, presenting Snow with his newly finessed school uniform. She says that Sejanus Plinth offered a ride to school, and here we can get a beat of silence except for the rowdiness of the neighbors below, implying that this is Sejanus' household. Then Tigress follows up that she declined on Snow's behalf. Snow begrudgingly prepares for school. The grandmam, possibly a little senile, puts a white rose into the pocket of his blazer because he's the valedictorian and needs to look the part. Snow thinks that he looks stupid and throws the rose into the garbage, replacing it with his mother's compact, which he slips into his breast pocket. Shot transition to the screeching of a sports car, with the subsequent visual of Mr. Plinth peeling out of the apartment complex and onto the Corso, followed by Sejanus in an equally bougie car. Snow takes caution to hide until Sejanus is long gone before he shamefully walks all the way to the school. Keep on the Sunny Side score bleeds into the Horn of Plenty national anthem as we see the Academy for the first time, and a shot that juxtaposes the grand building with the surrounding dilapidated Capitol streets. Snow keeps his head down as he pushes through the crowds of school kids and into the auditorium where a small group of seniors sit. The teacher, Dr. Gall, stands before a mentor program projector screen. She welcomes Snow, who cringes as the kids all turn to look at him. Sejanus at the front with the popular kids waves Snow over, but to no avail. Right when Snow thinks he's safe, Sejanus gets up and sits down next to him. Trying to make conversation, Sejanus tells Snow that he's nervous about which tribute he's gonna get, but Snow has nothing to worry about because he's the valedictorian. Then the tributes are assigned and maybe even pulled out of a bowl a la the reaping, when Sejanus gets the District 2 kid and Snow gets the District 12 girl. Snow reflexively scoffs, District 12? And we segue into the televised reaping where Lucy's name is called. In the book, Lucy drops the snake down the mayor's daughter, Mayfair's shirt, and then the mayor slaps her. But in the movie, I want Lucy to seem even more unhinged at first, while saving her singing for later. So when Lucy is called, I want little baby Maud to volunteer for her. She's clearly too young, and Lucy is horrified, and she tries to make sure one of the other Cubby kids handles the situation, so Mayfair takes the opportunity to stick her leg out to try to trip Lucy, and Lucy turns around and just clocks her. And it's a spectacle, obviously. Lucy drops the snake down Mayfair's back, and we can cut to the reactions of the Capitol kids in class, and Snow is dying inside because everyone's looking at him. And now we're back in District 12, and the Peacekeepers drag Lucy on stage, and she's a mess. Her makeup is all smeared, her hair is pulled. She looks a mess. And she's standing on the steps of the Justice Building in silence. And because we haven't introduced her reaping song, I'm okay to let her half sing, half whisper a line from Keep on the Sunny Side into the mic to bridge the awkward silence. And blackout. Lights in the Snow apartment. Snow is sitting with his head in his hands like the grump he is as Tigress and the Grandmam rewind and resume Lucy's reaping over and over. And Tigress says, I don't know know why you're upset. You've got a winner. Your mom would have. And then Snow snaps at her. Meanwhile, the TV has been left to play out and the news is on, and it's announced that the tribute train will arrive that evening. So Tigress insists that he go to the train station and build rapport, and Grandmam gives him a brand new white rose. Lucy is leaned against the window of the train, cast in deep shadows of nighttime save for the flicker of passing lights. From her point of view, we see the train come up on the station, where Snow is standing at the platform with the flower in his hands, and Lucy squints to see him better. Just like in the book, the tributes are let off the train in shackles. Snow tries to make the introduction to Lucy, but this time she just completely ignores him. He tries again, and just like in the book, but more unhinged this time. Because her hands are in shackles, maybe she leans over and bites the top of the flower off and walks off. And Snow tries to get her attention again by following them into the transport vehicle, and she says nothing. And the other tributes are about to rough him up. Maybe it's revealed here that the District 2 tribute, aka Sejanus' tribute, is a super buff Kato type guy from the first movie. Visually, he's the clear favorite to win. And right before Snow is about to get punched, Lucy diffuses the situation. So Lucy asks Snow what his deal is, and he tells her that he's her mentor, and everything pretty much continues as it does in the book, with the slight exception of Lucy's performance of the Valley song in the zoo becomes the first time Snow ever hears her sing. So now, maybe he's starting to think she's special. Not nuts, there's something there. And maybe we get a little interlude sequence when Snow is in his room looking at a sort of shrine to his mother where her dusty old guitar sits, but never mind that for now. Dr. Gall leads the class in her spooky mutt lab where she asks Sejanus to kill off one of the mutts, and maybe one of these mutts is like defective, and that's like a foreshadow. It's like different than the other mutts. It's like, it's messed up. So she asks him to kill it, and he refuses to do, so Dr. Gall kills the monster right in front of him. And Sejanus freaks out, and Snow takes him to the cafeteria to cool off. There, the students watch live TV coverage of Lucy at the zoo, where she says that they don't feed her, and both boys are taken aback, and maybe we get a comedic beat here where Sejanus whips out his cell phone and calls his parents to complain. Meanwhile, Snow decides to smuggle Lucy some food in a napkin. I'm skimming the zoo bonding because it would pretty much be just like what it is in the book. Snow and Lucy start to become friends, Sejanus gets more worked up. Perhaps in the beginning of the movie, Sejanus is even like the stereotypically annoying privileged kid with the catchphrase, "Back in District 2, because he's from District 2, which makes us empathize with Snow because we all know somebody like Sejanus. But as we gain more perspective, Sejanus becomes more likable. Also, at the same point, Snow needs to drop something of Lucy's into the mutt cage. It really doesn't matter what it is, but I'd like it to be accidental. In the book, he does it on purpose. Snow stays late at the zoo to talk to Lucy until closing and finds Sejanus' bright red sports car parked out in the front. Sejanus tells Snow that he thought he'd be here, and he wants to give him a ride home. As we drive down the Capitol streets late at night in this shiny new sports car while upbeat music plays, we see terrifying wartime flashbacks from Snow's point of view, as in the book. As we arrive at the Plinth apartment, the boys have a chat about swapping tributes. Maybe Snow gets all flustered and says something like, "You only brought me here because you want my tribute," bluffing that Lucy is really special, and maybe Snow doesn't fully believe that himself. And Sejanus doesn't like confrontation and says, "I just wanted you to have a better chance at winning," and then Sejanus' lawyer dad steps out of the shadows, having drafted the illegal legal documents, and says, "My son cannot appreciate being paired with the District 2 tribute." And then Snow begins to realize the Plinths are kind of corrupt. In the book, Snow rejects the offer, but let's say movie Snow accepts. Perhaps he sees the Plinths' fancy things and wants a life of luxury too. Now, Sejanus is Lucy's mentor, and Snow has the District 2 favorite, Marcus. Now things are getting messy. Snow makes the introduction to Lucy at the zoo, who is super peeved that Snow is abandoning her, and Sejanus thinks he's just naturally hateable. Then Sejanus makes the introduction with Snow to the District 2 kid, Marcus. Sejanus really wants to end on good terms, but instead he's attacked by Marcus, riffing on what happens in the book with Arachne and her tribute. Marcus is shot dead and is labeled as a traitor for assaulting such a precious capital boy. We experience the brief, disturbing funeral procession via the Snow's TV with the float. Maybe this is even just kind of in the background during one of Dr. Gall's spooky classes, because seeing things on the TV just is kind of a recurring motif in the Hunger Games. So, cut to the actual funeral live broadcast, where Sejanus, all dolled up, goes on stage to give a public statement, but instead of denouncing Marcus, he goes rogue and denounces the Capitol. Tigress and Snow watch their TV in shock and horror, and Tigress mentions that with Marcus gone, Lucy has a better shot at winning. Snow is uneasy because of the contract situation and the subsequent murder, so he plays along with Tigress. Tigress, who's implied to work in clothing, volunteers to make Lucy a dress for her next TV appearance. Tigress insists that Snow bring Lucy to the apartment so she can be fitted that night. night. So Snow arrives at the zoo on a little heist mission like the heist in the book, and Lucy is pissed at him. He tries to smooth things over and somehow she agrees. Snow and Lucy walk through the front door of the apartment and Grandmam stumbles out without her glasses on and asks who Lucy is. And Tigress and Snow and Lucy all look at each other and then Snow bluffs that it's Sejanus and Lucy can be like, hey. And then Snow shuffles Grandmam back into her room and maybe shoves a chair up against the door for good measure. Tigress takes one look at Lucy and gets a brilliant idea. She goes into the closet and pulls out Snow's mother's wedding dress and instructs Lucy to put it on. So Lucy exits to change and Snow reprimands her that nobody can wear his mom's dress. And Tigress says they've already sold off everything of value in the apartment except for that dress because of Snow. And now the time has come to do something with it. Snow is about to refute her when Lucy walks into frame, wearing the white wedding dress, paralleling and foreshadowing Katniss and Catching Fire. Tigress is none too impressed, and she asks them to bring her some purple cabbage from the kitchen to dye the dress. Snow is shook for many reasons, but Lucy is down to help, and she's actually very good at assisting Tigress, and they have kind of a girl bonding moment. It's all intense and kind of light in a comedic segment with fun music as these three high school aged kids are racing against the clock to get Lucy out of the house before sunrise. This is all to foreshadow A, Tigress's career as the first big capital fashion designer, and B, Katniss's wedding dress, which was chosen by Snow.
Really? A wedding dress?
Snow made me wear it.
And C, give us more of Snow and Lucy bonding and him seeing her as more than a tribute. The scene doesn't really have to be more than a couple minutes. It's kind of like a montage thing, you know, like one of those comedy movie tropes. It's class the next day. We're in Dr. Gull's spooky lab with the mutant animals. Sejanus is absent. Maybe he stayed homesick. Maybe his parents are punishing him. Nobody knows. Don't worry about it. Dr. Gull shows her class her prototype batch of terrifying arena serpents designed after Lucy Gray, the infamous Snake Girl. After class, everyone goes upstairs for the questionnaire day with the tributes. Now here's the pickle. The contract with Sejanus was signed on the deal. The school is unaware of it. With Sejanus absent, Lucy is unattended. With the District 2 kid dead, Snow no longer has a tribute, so Snow decides to slide into Lucy's interview cubicle and that scene from the book plays out. This time it feels more scandalous. Stakes, a sense of urgency. He wants to have his cake and eat it too. In fact, he brings Tigress's pastry to Lucy as a peace offering before he dishes out his first deliberate lie. Snow tells Lucy that the school disallowed the tribute swap, so they're still a team. Lucy laments about wanting to win the games but has no skills whatsoever. Snow suggests that the televised tribute interview the next day might be a good opportunity to get sponsors if she chooses to sing again, with the implied plan that with enough sponsor gifts she'll be able to outlast everybody else in the arena. Lucy's a little nervous, but Snow incentivizes her with his mother's guitar. So she agrees. On interview day, Tigress is Lucy's stylist, the very first stylist, and has Lucy dressed up beautifully. She sings her song and becomes the new heavy favorite. The host calls Snow out on stage to claim his tribute, where he gives her the white rose from his boutonniere as her tribute token, and Lucy kisses him, and the audience loves it, and it's harkening back to that star-crossed lovers thing we saw in the original film. Afterwards, backstage in Lucy's dressing room, Lucy's feeling hopeful about her odds in the games. They're finally in her favor. And Snow is totally all out of sorts. His mind is elsewhere. He takes back his rose, and he tells her that this is the last time they're going to see each other. And suddenly, the energy is very uncomfortable. And Lucy is forlorn and asks him whether or not he really thinks she can win. All the while, Snow is scraping out his beloved mother's compact and filling it with rat poison from a trap in the corner of the room. He gives it to Lucy, replacing it as her tribute token. Now Lucy has 3 of his mom's things: the dress, the guitar, and the compact. Snow tells her that it doesn't matter if he thinks she'll win because now she will win. It's romantic, but in a weird sort of illegal way. Just like in the book. But this time Lucy looks the part of a capital girl, as Snow, who we've established as superficial, is feeling all some type of way about it. Scandal! Now it's games day. Snow willingly puts a white rose into his lapel. He's confident on his walk to school since Lucy is the heavy favorite. People are celebrating the games, and Snow accepts Mr. Plinth's ride to the academy. He's thinking that all is well and good, you know, we're all having a good time here. As they pull in, they see the pedestals rise up out of the arena from the big jumbotron in front of the school, and here it's revealed that we have a new District 2 tribute. District 2's very own Sejanus Plinth. Mr. Plinth screeches the car around and books them into an alleyway. He threatens Snow, saying that he may technically be Lucy's mentor, but he signed a contract and on paper, he is now bound to Sejanus, and he desperately incentivizes him with money or power or anything Snow has ever wished for this whole time. And we can leave Snow here for a bit and cut to some games content with some cool tunnel action sequences. The comedy in all of this in some dark way is these crazy action scenes in the tunnels below the amphitheater are juxtaposed with stale blank footage of the above ground arena, aka the only place where the cameras are. Lucy and Sejanus become unlikely allies and both rely on Snow to get them gifts and protect them. They make a little hideout in the tunnel and Lucy does her poison in the water thing. Sejanus tells Lucy about the contract and is like, no, Snow is both of our mentors. He will help both of us. Maybe we can both escape. And so Lucy is like, this man lied to me. Snow's freaking out and getting tons of press coverage. He's decided to adopt the luck of the draw strategy in that he's just gonna let it ride out and whoever organically comes out on top, comes out on top. In other words, he doesn't want to decide, but because it's a movie, our last two tributes have to be Lucy and Sejanus. And how will that work? Well, tentatively, I can imagine Sejanus at some point in the tunnels saying that he and Lucy need to split up so they don't have to turn on each other, and she halves the poison with him so that he has a defense. Perhaps this is motivated by Sejanus accidentally almost drinking Lucy's poison water and her freaking out. It's the final showdown, and Snow is sweating bullets. He's surrounded by spectators and the press. A reporter refers to Lucy as the Snake Girl, and Snow suddenly remembers Dr. Gall and books it to the creepy lab. He arrives just as she's about to release the snakes, and Gall stands there, blank-faced, yet eerily amused. Snow doesn't want to tell her the truth and is basically just grasping at straws. Finally, Gall pulls the little thing he put in the tank from her pocket and asks, is this why? We cut to the broadcast where the reporter is saying at any moment the newly engineered mutts will be deployed for the first time. Snow looks at Gall, who's calm and psychotic as ever, and hands him the snake deploy button saying, the choice is yours, valedictorian. We see Lucy's on-screen fan base and Sejanus being trashed as rebel scum. Snow flashes back to Mr. Plinth saying on paper he's bound to Sejanus. Maybe he is, but Lucy is not, and that's an easy out. Make Lucy look like the bad guy and profit off the public acclaim for having mentored the victor. So, to the glee of a psychopath teacher, he sends in the snakes. And you know how that ends. Lucy is crowned victor. Snow convinces himself that he made a 10 out of 10 decision. The very next morning, he rushes to the dispatch place or wherever to see Lucy, but is told she already left for District 12. At the District 12 train station, Lucy steps off the train and is greeted by Maud and the Cubby kids. Meanwhile, Snow is standing at the Capitol dispatch place like, how could she have done this to me? His sulking is cut off when his phone rings and it's a call from Mr. Plinth, and Snow freaks out, so on a whim he tosses his phone into the garbage or into the lake or whatever and buys a train ticket to District 12. Back in District 12, there's a knock on the Cubby house's door, and Lucy opens it to see it's Snow. And maybe now she's with Billy, and she takes a look at Snow and goes, what are you doing here? And it becomes clear that she thought this whole thing was an act on both of their parts. But now that he's here, I mean, sure, I guess he can hang out. We see the Hob scene where Lucy's singing with the Cubby, but I want that to take a back seat to us learning that Lucy is the breadwinner for her family and that she's pretty messed up and a bit morally gray. Lucy has a pet Jabberjay at the Cubby house that Snow hates. It repeats what they say, it makes their arguments sound stupid, maybe it even exposes random secrets to the Cubby kids. One day Snow passes by some peacekeepers who are rounding up Jabberjays who are sent back to the Capitol on recall by order of Dr. Gall's spooky lab. And Snow gets the idea to pull out that old contract out of his backpack and clips off the signature line, making it look like something that the Plinths just drafted up. He attaches it to Lucy's pet Jabberjay and plants it on the truck to be shipped to the Capitol. And then maybe Billy's caught cheating with the mayor's daughter, and the next day they're both found dead. Billy to have been shot and Mayfair to have been poisoned. And everyone is suspicious of Lucy, and she even wonders if she did it herself. Maybe she was like really intoxicated that night. And because we never see who did it, we can't really be sure. Lucy is sentenced to be hanged for the crime at the hanging tree, and she decides to run away. Snow tells her that if she gives him the murder weapon, he'll confess to the crime because he has nothing to live for while she has her family. Snow goes to the Justice Building to turn himself in, but sees a headline that Mr. Plinth was executed for treason in the Capitol. So Snow turns right around and decides to hunt down Lucy to get rid of the last of the witnesses to his crimes with the contract. And that personal Hunger Games thing happens. And we don't really know if he kills her or what. I think it'd be cool if this was filmed in like shaky cam. I know y'all hate the shaky cam from the first movie. I I like the shaky cam. Honestly, I like it, especially in the arena scenes. So I think it'd be cool if this was in shaky cam and that kind of same vibe of like, all we hear is music really loud and the dialogue is like real muted and we can barely hear it. We're like, oh no, what's gonna happen? Oh no. And we don't really know if he kills her or what, but the shot goes off and we black out. And then the final scene is Snow's high school graduation. We're back at the Capitol. He's the valedictorian, and Dr. Gall announces that he's going to some prestigious scholarship. When he shakes her hand to get the diploma, we see one of those little snakes slither into the sleeve of her shirt. The end. Mid-credit scene. We're in Dr. Gall's spooky lab. She wheels out a new project hidden beneath the cloth. We don't see what's inside, but she calls it a songbird in a cage. And it's the first in her new line of cruel and unusual punishments for traitors. The Avoxes. Post-credit scene. It's the reaping of the 74th Hunger Games. Prim's name is called and we zoom out a little to see we're watching the reaping from the perspective of elderly Snow's TV. He takes a sip of tea. Katniss volunteers, then he nonchalantly turns to someone just out of frame and says, "She reminds me of you, dear." The end. Music and fashion are a huge part of the show and I love it, but I can't just say I'm changing the tone at the top of every show in some big text scroll. I need to show you it's different. Hi, it's editing me. I don't know why the heck I'm talking like I'm actually working on this project or have any say in what's gonna happen. Please just bear with me. Okay, bye. This isn't the Hunger Games world you remember from 10 years ago. The fundamental heart and soul is the same, but all the dressings are different. Aesthetically, we're going to be taking that mid-century District 12 fashion and expand it into something a little more bohemian, a little more DIY, a little more 1920s, with drop waists, tiered skirts, and a use of lightweight, summery draped fabrics, open, loose things that can catch the wind, like crinkle chiffons and gingham and print and cotton, lots of braiding and knots because that's what we see in the original trilogy, with like caps and high socks and feathers that are braided into hair, particularly for Lucy. Tones that echo the original District 12 aesthetic of dusty colors, but with a bit more pastel to them. More of a print, more of something to say, because this is pre-Capitol fashion, Pan Am. So District 12 has more of a fashion identity of its own, and a little, but maybe not a lot, more industrialization. I want to see more of an aesthetic marriage between District 12 and the Capitol. Perhaps the Capitol's fashion at this point is more reflective of the 50s fashion we see in the Katniss timeline, as in what was once fashionable in Pan Am goes on to become outdated district wear. Songbirds gives us the unique opportunity to showcase true district fashion, and this brings us back to our real versus true narrative. Yes, we see a sampling of district fashion in the tribute parades, but that's more of a high fashion, Capitol sanitized experience designed by people who are not from the districts. Songbirds shows our tributes going into the arena wearing clothes from their homes. So now we can see what a District 4 kid actually wears. How does the fishnet-esque knitting of their shirt differentiate from the crochet of a District 12 kid? What type of fabric does a District 11 agriculture kid wear? Floral printed cotton or flax, linen, big work boots? Does the District 10 livestock kid wear wool even though it's summer? Do they have an advantage because they have leather boots while the District 4 fishing kid has sandals? Are our career district tributes from 1 and 2 dressed advantageously because their economies allow for more luxurious athletic clothing? Do they have layers that would protect them from the elements as well as in combat? Are their clothes better tailored to their bodies because they can afford to replace outgrown outfits, making them perhaps look healthier and more attractive candidates to Capitol sponsors? Are they wearing synthetic materials and bolder prints made in a factory as opposed to on a hand-operated loom? I digress, but these are all visual and stylistic choices that I'm really looking forward to seeing in the movie. Show me true. Show me authentic. We've seen 4 movies with Capitol Couture fashion. Give me a survey of the rest of Pan Am. One of my favorite things about Songbirds is the musicality of it. Hunger Games has always had music in it, but this one really leans into music as a storytelling device. There are pages and pages of just lyrics in this book, and I love that. So the Hunger Games has a really interesting discography. All 4 movies are scored by the same musician, but the accompanying soundtracks are a curated mix of multiple artists. And all 4 albums are drastically different. And I love that. The first album is very indie and folksy with a hint of alternative rock. Taylor Swift anchors his soundtrack with her 2012 era country rock sound that we see on Speak Now and Red, the 2 albums that sandwiched her Hunger Games work, and it's just beautiful. We have some songs by other artists that go full folk and some that go full alternative. Safe and Sound could have been put into the movie. It could have been the song that Katniss sang to Rue. That's how well it fits in my opinion. Because we have Taylor Swift's work as our centerpiece for the most part, it all feels very cohesive. She actually won won a Grammy for her work on this album. It's also notable that this album is the only one that has a title different from just the film's title, so creativity points there. The Catching Fire album seems to be the most popular one. It's an electro-pop rock album. The songs sound cohesive with each other, but they're a bit more divorced from the tone of the movie. When you imagine Elastic Heart, I guarantee you Catching Fire isn't the first thing that comes to mind. It's that Sia music video. Credit where it's due, We Remain is wonderful and could have been put into the movie, I think. Mockingjay Part 1's soundtrack was curated by Lorde, and I really like how they chose to have one artist oversee the musical construction of the entire album. This one is completely electro-pop, and the music feels cohesive with itself, but completely divorced from the movie. If you played All My Love sung by Ariana Grande, or This Is Not a Game by the Chemical Brothers, or pretty much any track on this album over any scene in Mockingjay, it wouldn't fit whatsoever. Mockingjay Part 2 doesn't have a companion soundtrack, which begs the question, did they give up? Did they not want to invest in a companion album? Did they not have anything new to say? Did they think this movie was dead on arrival? This is the culmination of 4 years of movies, and there's no epic finale album? What happened? Considering the direction things were going, I'm sure this companion album would have been full EDM strobe light Katniss. So that brings us to Songbirds. Musically, I'd like it to be most similar to the first album, with influence from country rock, indie pop, and perhaps a touch of musical theater.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
But this is not Hunger Games, the spontaneous Broadway musical. I'm using the term musical theater very loosely, in the same way that I might say A Star is Born is musical theater. It's because music is a direct storytelling device, as you would see in musical theater. We're singing to tell a story, we're not just singing for sound. I would love to see Songbirds lean heavily into its music. I'd like the companion album for Songbirds to be kind of similar to what the Star is Born companion album is, in that this is the Covey's concept album. This is the music they sing at the Hob. This concept album would include all of the music included in the book that we inevitably aren't able to add into the film. We also have some companion songs by mainstream artists at the end for good measure. And a side that's a little yikes, and it's neither here nor there, but it explains why I did all this, I suppose, is that I really like Lucy Gray, as I mentioned before. I liked seeing what I perceived to be a theater kid in this universe, and I really wanted to audition for this movie. I thought it would be really cool to see an Asian actress in a leading role in this franchise, because to the best of my knowledge, there are no Asian principal characters in the Hunger Games at all. And we have 4 heckin' movies! I'll leave you with that for now. I've been compiling all my thoughts here for about a year now. It's been about a year since the book came out, and I thought I'd publish them here before any news on the movie comes out. So when it's inevitably completely different from what I'd imagined, people won't just think I'm moaning and groaning for the sake of being a contrarian. There's a separate video I've linked with my demo compilation, and right after I finish talking here, there's some pop companion songs that I've written and recorded, all very questionable in quality. Be warned. If you've stuck around this long, thank you. Have a great day, and may the odds be ever in your favor. P.S. You know how Patina Miller, aka the leading player, aka one of my favorite Broadway actresses of all time, played Commander Paler? I would love to see more Broadway actors in the Hunger Games, so may I suggest Christian Borle? Somehow, some way. That man was meant to play an unhinged villain. Can we please make him be Mr. Plinth or the mayor? He can be the snake, I don't care. Ooh, that rhymes. Put him in!